At last, we're visiting a garden that's full of flowers. Many prefer a foliage-full plot, but done well, nothing can beat English garden flowers in their full glory. Jane Ann Walton grows flowers in her 4-acre garden near Norwich. She photographs them and uses them to inspire her textile works. She particularly loves auriculas, and they have a fascinating history. So let's meet Jane Ann and find out more about these heart-stopping flowers. So here we are, surrounded by your beautiful auriculas. How did you first get into them, Jane Ann?
Well, it was going to Chelsea Flower Show in, I think, the late 1980s and seeing Brenda Hyatt's amazing displays. I don't know whether you remember them. They were displayed against a black background in gold frames, a lot of them.
Black velvet they had in the background.
Yes. And it just really made you look at them rather than the sort of very busy Chelsea gardens. You had these extraordinary plants, obviously with a lot of history behind them.
Yes.
And I think it was the green ones that fascinated me most. I mean, there's an example here, and it's a green-edged auricula.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
So the petals, if you like, are actually a modified leaf.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought they were extraordinary, and I didn't really think I'd be able to grow them, but I thought, well, I'll have a go. And I visited various specialist nurseries and got some, and I'm ashamed to say that I killed them. I thought they looked such delicate little flowers that I kept them in a cold frame all winter with the lid shut more than it should have been. And the advice is not to water them too much in the winter, which I didn't. But of course, cold frames can get very hot, even in midwinter. Yes. And I think they just suffocated. So, lesson learnt. And then over the years, I have accumulated quite a few, probably about 500 plants.
Gosh, heavens.
I've had to be a little more ruthless at repotting time now. So, the ones that look ropey, I really think you've got to go because it's no good trying to grow too many.
No, very true. So can we go and see how and where you grow?
Yes, of course, yes.
Gosh, don't they look wonderful? So tell us how you actually grow these lovely things.
Well, one way is to grow them from seed, and obviously that's going to be the cheapest way to do it, really.
Yes.
So this is seed that I got from the National Auricula and Primula Society, and if you're keen, it's a really good way to start. The seed, you have to pay a little bit to cover postage, but it doesn't cost much, and membership doesn't cost much. And you get access to some really good seed from members all over the country. So compost-wise, I use a very gritty compost, and I keep my recipe written out there.
Well done.
So now we're trying to get rid of the peat and use a peat-free multi-purpose. Every year my mix changes a bit. I used to use more grit, but it made the pots very heavy and it can keep the compost a bit too wet. So I'm kind of mixing in more perlite now instead of the grit.
Right.
And then the seed's very fine. So when I sow it, I get some grit on top, scatter the seed on top of the grit, and then mist it in with a little hand sprayer.
And you don't put any compost on top?
No, the seed is so fine.
Yeah, drops down.
So now it drops down between the stones and hopefully comes up like this pot. Quite where I'm going to put all these, I don't know, because if you look at the number of seedlings in the pot,
yes, exactly.
It's going to be another few framefuls, but there you go. And then I use the same mix really for the offsets and the grown-up plants. I don't think there's a compost that you could just buy at the garden centre, pour out of the bag, and it would be perfect. I don't think there's anything. You have to mix it yourself. And I do enjoy mixing compost.
Can you tell us a bit about their history?
In the 1500s, we had a big influx of Huguenot weavers who came to Norwich. And they brought their expertise of growing auriculas and their enthusiasm, and they also were great canary breeding enthusiasts. Hence the Norwich Canaries football team, because Norwich has a big connection with canary breeding.
It does.
So the florists formed societies, and they would meet in pubs, and they would bring their best plants and compete, and often won copper kettles and things. The first recorded florist's feast was actually in Norwich in 1673.
Gosh, so early.
And the National Auricula and Primula Society was formed in 1873 and is still going strong.
Gosh.
With sort of groups. I think there are 3 groups across the country. I belong to the Midlands and West section. I collect seed, and that goes to the society, and our section, the Midlands and West section, distributed 21,000 seeds to people all over the world last year.
Wow.
Which is, hats off to the couple who have been doing it for many years, because they're all counted out by hand.
There's passionate people who keep these things going.
Yes.
So, Jane-Anne, will you explain to us what the different sorts of auriculas are? What's this one, for instance?
That's a border. So that's one that I grew from seed, and they're probably the easiest to grow, I think. A little bit more forgiving, and it can cope with some rain on it. So you could theoretically plant it in the garden. Right. I don't, because I find when I did have them planted in flower beds, for a start, they're sort of down very close to the ground, so you can't really see them to admire them. And also they got overgrown by the plants. And really you have to keep digging them up and splitting them. So it's easier really to keep them in pots.
No, and they do look pretty too.
And then this one and this one are alpine auriculas, so-called. So they have the 2 colours on the flower, either a yellow or a white centre. So you get gold-centred and light-centred alpines.
And are they smaller? They seem smaller?
Not necessarily. No. That border is a bit blousy, really. Then we've got, this is perhaps the classic auricula with all the farina on the leaves, and farina is French for flower. Yeah. Now, if that gets rain blown in on it, it goes horrible. The farina is loose, and it just goes like flour and water paste and smears across the flower. And it looks very sad.
That's beautiful.
This one is called Fleet Street, I think. There is a whole series bred by someone who named all his plants after positions on the Monopoly board. So I've got Coventry Street, Fleet Street, Euston Road.
One with a sense of humour.
Yes.
That's pretty.
If you're growing and showing auriculas, if you win a prize card, then you are invited to name your seedlings. So you know if an auricula is named that it's a good one, because it's won prizes. One? Yes, I have actually. That one is actually Cuckoo Dawn, and I've also named one called Swanton Cuckoo.
Pretty.
Then we've got the doubles.
Yes,
these ones here.
Yes.
Who have I forgotten? I'm sure I've forgotten somebody. Oh, the edges. So the edges have flowers that are like modified leaves. So this one is an edge. This one is a grey edge, and then you get the green edge ones that I showed you earlier.
That is lovely.
Started it all off. So these are, the edges are show auriculas. Oh, and then there are fancies, which kind of you get stripes.
Haven't seen any stripes.
Have we got any good stripes here? This one is a stripe called Arundel stripe. I really like that one. I think it's a lovely combination of colour.
Yes, it is. Beautiful. And this is a beautiful way of displaying them. It must protect them a little bit, but it certainly shows them off.
Yes, I think it's rather like the snowdrops, which I grow in raised beds. It's really nice to have them at eye level. You can really appreciate them, and I can see them from the house. And the idea, it was a sort of surprise birthday present from a friend years ago. She and her family made me one. So she made one, and then we've sort of increased the numbers.
So this is where you keep your babies and you grow your babies?
Yes.
Why here?
It's the north side of the garage, so for me it makes them slightly more low maintenance, because they do not like sun, particularly in the summer. If they get hot and dry, they get very sad, and they get infected with red spider mites, which sort of suck the sap out of the leaves, and the root avids really thrive in hot conditions.
Oh, gosh.
So here in the summer I can leave them in the shade and just check on the watering maybe twice a week, and they're not as much work as they would be if they were in a greenhouse.
Yeah.
it means that I'm not growing the best plants because they are a little short on light, and they also tend to flower quite sort of one-sided. And if you're showing, they're looking for a lovely, perfect round head, which I don't think I'm going to get in these conditions. But in that these are going to go out into the theatres, it doesn't really matter if they're one-sided, because I kind of want to see all the flowers on one side anyway. So,
but you've
it suits
made
me.
little props for them.
Yes, if they're going on display, they tend to need staking. So I've got little kebab stakes, which I paint sort of sage green, and then I tie them up with fine green crochet thread.
Gosh, you do work hard for them.
It's quite fun. It's quite meditative, actually, coming out and having a auricular faffing session. But it can take all day.
I bet.
Getting them ready to go in the theatres.
So these are the seedlings here.
These are the offsets.
Yes.
So an auricula
offsets,
tends to produce little babies around the side.
Yes,
so this one has got one offset.
Increase mine.
And I repot generally in early autumn. It depends on the weather. You've got to wait till the weather cools down a bit. And these days we seem to have to wait longer and longer. So I take the offsets off, and if they're quite small, then I'll put several in a pot. And then I potted these on into their own pots about 3 weeks ago. So they will grow on and hopefully flower for us next year.
And they're all labelled, so you know what they're going to be, being offsets. That's very useful.
Occasionally mix-ups do occur because I have around 500 plants to repot. So my heart does rather sink at repotting time.
I bet.
Because you really have to wash all the soil off the roots of each plant.
And some of them have little bits of wool on them?
Yes, that's the ones that I'm marking that I mustn't cut the heads off, because I'm saving seed to give to the Midland and West group of the Primula and Auricula Society. So that seed will be taken off, when they go a bit crispy, sort of June, July time, I guess.
And tiny seeds, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yes.
And when you go to the shows, are we talking sort of tulip mania prices? Are they very expensive?
No, they're not. About £4.50 a plant, which is very reasonable.
Nothing.
And half of that money goes to the society, I think. Whereas on eBay, people seem to be paying £20 and upwards for an individual plant. I've given up looking on eBay because the prices are just ridiculous.
And
but they are just so hard to get hold of any other way, the named ones.
And is there an Auricula Society?
Yes, it's the National Auricula and Primula Society. Okay. So if you go to shows, then they have really good sales tables where people sell off their surplus plants.
So that's where people would get hold of them?
Yes. And then there are about 4 specialist nurseries left now in the country. But really, how anyone makes money out of growing auriculas, I don't know, because quite often a cultivar will only produce 1 baby a year.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's a lot of work for just producing 1 plant a year,
It's got to be worth it there, hasn't it? Look at them, they're lovely. Thanks so much, Jane Ann, for sharing your passion with us and explaining the rich history of these precious plants. Next, we're returning to the garden of Andrew Salter. We first visited Andrew's garden in November. It looked incredible then, so just imagine what it'll look like in June. We can't wait. See you there.